All right, welcome. This is our first experiment with doing live or video lecture. I mean, you guys aren't live right now because I'm just doing this one. But usually when I do the video lectures, I will be letting you know when I'm going to be recording, and you guys will be able to jump into a Google Hangout with me, and I'll be able to give the lecture, and you guys can ask questions, and I can answer them live right on the spot. But then after I'm done with the lecture, I will give you guys a link where you can view it in case you weren't able to attend the live stream. This is an experiment for me. This is new technology. I've never really done something like this before, especially for a class. So we'll see how it goes. Bear with me, all the usual caveats. The lecture today is going to be about talking through the nuts and bolts of the syllabus. I thought if I could do this on a video lecture, and then we don't have to take class time for that, and we can do more of the fun stuff about trying to understand what philosophy is all about and what it means to do philosophy and give you a better picture of what's going to be happening this quarter. So, but in terms of the nuts and bolts, that's what we're here to cover today. So all the different things that, the different types of assignments, how the grading is going to work, all of that good stuff is what we're going to do. And I actually have the course syllabus set up right here, so we can kind of look at the different elements and you can follow along with the syllabus. So let's take a look. This course description stuff, that's what I'll be talking about on Wednesday. And what philosophy is. I got 3 different definitions there. Hopefully you've taken a look at it. Oh boy, I gotta sneeze. I'll have to pause. There we go. You guys didn't need to hear a big sneeze on your speakers. That's no good. But it's still in there a little bit, so we'll see what happens. Okay, so looking on your screen here, we've got 4 different sections of the grading. There's going to be this class video attendance thing, and if for the Monday, Wednesday in class sessions, if you're there, I'm going to take attendance. That's how we're going to cover that half of the 20%. The rest of it is going to be from watching these video lectures. And the way I'm going to do this, to check to see whether you actually watched the video or not, is I'm going to, at some point in the lecture, I'm going to give you a code word. And I have a little quiz set up on Canvas. So after you've watched the lecture, if you watched it, you'll know the code word because I'll have said it. And then you just have to submit a very quick quiz that just gives what the code word is. And I'm not going to tell you the code word yet, but at some point later in this lecture, I will give you the code, and then you'll know what it is. And then you can go to the quiz on Canvas and input it. And that's how I'll know you'll have watched the video. I will not tell you when I'm going to say the code word, so you can't skip around the video, sneaky and stuff. Please forgive me for that, but that's how we're going to do it. So pretty much it's going to be about 10% in-class attendance, 10% these little quizzes to check to see whether you've watched the video. I'm planning on doing about 2 video lectures a week. My plan right now for scheduling when I'm going to stream them is 8 p.m. Monday night and Wednesday night. And we'll try that out. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how many people are able to show up. If there aren't a lot of people, or it turns out that there's a better time, we can always adjust that later on in the quarter. And you'll see there on the syllabus that I say all course parameters are subject to change, as you know from yesterday, from Monday, that this is an experiment for me. First time doing things this way, teaching a class this way. So I'm happy to adjust it, very flexible about what's going to take place here with how the course will look by the time we get to the end of the quarter. So please always give me feedback about this in terms of what's working and what's not working and what you imagine could maybe happen that would be better for you. I'm very, very open to that kind of feedback. So that's the 20% for attendance. Journal entries are also 20% of your final grade. And let's scroll down to where I talk about the journals. So here I say each week you'll be asked to write a short 1 to 2 page response on the topic being discussed during class the previous week. Now, because our reading schedule can sometimes get a little flexible, pretty much anything that we did during the week is up for discussion in this journal entry. So maybe it was something that happened in a lecture or something in the readings somewhere that we were discussing that week. Maybe something that showed up in the forum discussion post that I'll be talking about a little bit later. Basically, anything that took place during that week's events in our class is open for you to use as your topic for the journal entry. Um, Basically, I want you to send this to me on Canvas by midnight every Friday. So every Friday you're going to have one of these journal entries. The only exceptions are going to be when you have one of these paper projects due. If you've got a paper project thing happening, like the paper outline or a draft or something like that, then I'm not going to make you do double duty with journal entries and a paper project. So I'll be letting you know when those weeks are happening. It should be obvious that I've like officially assigned that writing assignment, and then I'll let you know there's no journal due that week. But otherwise, you will have a journal. You can count on that every Friday. It's going to happen. And you'll, of course, see it on the Canvas schedule and have notifications like normal, alerting you that you've got one of those journals due. But that's one of the like regularly scheduled assignments that you can count on happening almost every week. Now, what am I looking for these journals? I want to keep it really open for you to be able to explore things, explore your own thoughts and ideas and reactions to what's going on in the material. These, like I mentioned in class on Monday, the journals are kind of like preparation for doing the paper projects. So basically, the structure of a journal is going to look like this. The first third to a half is just going to be articulating the idea that you want to talk about. So let's say it's like an argument or a particular point or claim that happened in the reading or in discussions or in the lectures, any of those sources. Some sort of thing that jumped out at you as worthy of note, maybe something that you've got a strong evaluation of, anything like that. But the first job, before you say what you think about it, you first have to just explain what you're talking about. So you're going to have to share that idea, and I want you to imagine explaining it as if you were telling someone who's not in the class, who didn't do the reading, who didn't already encounter this idea. Your job is to explain that idea to them. And the reason I want you to focus on this so explicitly is that one of the big skills to develop in doing philosophy is how to explain other people's ideas in a way that captures their force charitably. That is, you're not turning it into something like a cartoon version of their idea. You want to be able to present the idea in a way where it's clear what the force of that idea is supposed to be, like the logic of it, so to speak. So that's your first task in these journals, is to just explain and describe what it is that you want to talk about. What's your sort of target or your subject for the journal reflection. The second half, or hopefully closer to 2/3, like most of your journal should not be explaining the idea, but giving your kind of evaluative feedback of it. Maybe you like the idea, maybe you don't like the idea. Maybe, so that's one thing that could happen. Certainly whether you like the idea, whether you don't like the idea, what you think is maybe wrong with it or what you think is right about it. Another thing that can happen in a journal entry is you could just be giving a kind of analysis of the idea. Maybe there's something about the idea that's confusing. Maybe there's some room for like different interpretations, or maybe there's like distinction that you want to draw out that shows like, well, this idea under this context looks like this, and under that context it looks like something else that's totally different. Or where there's some subtlety that isn't in that original idea, but that you want to kind of draw our attention to. Certainly that can work too. It's basically you throwing your 2 cents in related to that idea. The most important thing here that I want you to try to push yourself to do is to defend your response. This isn't a journal entry in the sense of just like, here's what I have to say about it, or here's just my 2 cents. Here's my opinion. This isn't just about sharing your opinion. Articulating your own thoughts and beliefs, also an important skill. Definitely something that we care about in philosophy. But even we just want more than that. We want to hear an argument. If you think that this is true, or this is what your beliefs are on this topic, tell us why we should have those beliefs too. And this is something I'll be talking about a lot this week, especially when we get to the Code of Intellectual Conduct, that it can seem kind of audacious or even arrogant to say like, I'm going to tell you what I think you should think for yourself, sort of thing. But that's exactly what philosophers do. And we try to do it in a way that's modest and respectful of how everyone does think for themselves. We want to encourage people to think for themselves. We're going to read Wittgenstein later on in the quarter, and he's got this awesome little quote in the preface to his philosophical investigations where he says something to the effect, I might not do it off the top of my head, but he says something like, I've tried to like organize my thoughts here and share what my thinking is on this issue. For him, it's philosophy of language. He's trying to explain how linguistic meaning works. He says, I hope that my thoughts inspire your own thoughts. I hope that me sharing my philosophical views on this subject is not a substitute for you thinking for yourself. And that's exactly the kind of atmosphere that's always present in philosophy. Sometimes the tone and style might sound a little off-putting, that it's like, who are you to say what I should think, kind of thing. But this is really a cooperative project we're trying to work on together. I want to hear what other people have to say, because maybe they got some good ideas. Maybe there's some stuff that I should believe for myself, something I can say, learn from them, something like that. So when you're offering your own ideas, try to help us to see the reasons why your ideas have some recommendation to them. And there's a general understanding in philosophy that people are modest, that they don't think that they're God and they can just decree what's true or something like that. That we're always looking for what are the reasons, what are the justifications. And that's the atmosphere I'm going to assume when I'm reading your journal entries too. So you don't have to, like, kind of like with the advice I gave about the little writing assignment that you're working on right now, hopefully, that's due tomorrow. I don't need to hear all these caveats about how you're like aware that there's other people who think things differently and it's just your opinion. It's just maybe in your experience things have looked this way or something like that. All those little caveats are kind of taken for granted. I'm going to assume that that's what's going on. Sometimes it is good to share some of the details of your modesty. It's good. A good policy in philosophy is to share not only the reasons why you think your idea is a good one, but maybe also to indicate where its weaknesses are. Like, you're like, I think this is true right now, and I got some reasons for it, but I'm also aware that there might be some objections, and I can tell you what those objections are. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with those objections, so it's a weakness for my position right now. Being really upfront and honest about it, that's also great. Any of that you're building into your journal is going to be fantastic. We want to have the focus be here on getting into the argument, getting into the debate, the dialectic, the back and forth of the debate. I want to see that. I want to see you kind of pushing in that direction, because that's definitely what I'm going to be asking for when it comes time to start writing your paper, when you're going to be working on your big paper project for the quarter. So that's what I'm looking for with the journals. 1 page is the minimum. So, and that's a full page of text. I'm not looking for like your name, the date, the class, my name, what you had for breakfast, and then finally there's a little bit that's like the content of your actual journal. Don't do that. I will be grading. You'll get half credit or worse if it's shorter than that 1 page minimum. Really, a page is not that long. And if you're really doing this 2-step thing of here's the idea I want to talk about, and I'm going to explain it as if you're not already familiar with it, and then here's what I have to say about it, and here are the reasons why I think that I'm right about this, or why these ideas are correct. That's a lot of work right there. You want to aim closer for 2 pages, and even that's pretty short for putting together a case for something. If you want to go crazy long on that too, by all means, that's great. I mean, the more, like I said, the more you put into this class, the more you'll get out of it. And the journals are a great place to put more effort into the class. Okay, so that's the journals. If you got questions about it, maybe we can talk about that on Wednesday if you get a chance to watch this lecture today. Let's go back to the syllabus here and talk about these online. I'm going to skip the writing assignments for right now. Let's talk about the online discussion posts. So I'm still kind of trying to figure out how to make these work with Canvas, but I got this basic format. I was sharing a little bit about where this came from my original, from my normal way of teaching the class, where it's an on-campus class every day. It came from these things that I called reading comments. And I'd have students bring them to class the first day that we'd have a new reading due. And they're just 3 really quick questions or comments, very short, a sentence or 2. I've described them as like things you might raise your hand in class and say, like either a response or a question. It could be something as simple as like, I'm not sure what he's saying in this section when he uses this phrase or something like that. I didn't know what he meant. That's good enough right there. Being like, here's a particular idea or word or phrase or something like that, an argument. that I don't understand and I want to understand. That's fine. If you can even offer something like, I think they're saying this, that's even better. It could also be a kind of reaction of being like, I think this idea is terrible. Like, this is totally wrong, and maybe a quick argument or reason why, something like that. This is not supposed to be anywhere close to the journal. The journals, you got a little more time here to like, a little more space to develop what you have to say about it, to defend it, that sort of thing. These reading comments are supposed to be just like really quick things. If you guys don't really have books anymore, when I took philosophy, I had to buy all these books all the time. I try to make it easy on you. I hope you appreciate that. No books needed to be purchased sort of thing. But if you had a hard copy book in front of you and you're kind of like good active reader, you probably were underlining things and making little comments and stuff like that. And that's another way you can think about these reading comments. You're like, this is a good idea because it makes me think about this, or like, yeah, this bullshit right there, boom, right on the page. Those are the things that the reading comments are for. In our class, we don't have these reading comments. We're having these online discussion forums that we're going to be kind of translating that kind of assignment into. Same parameters in terms of what I'm looking to have you post. Still doesn't need to be very long. If you want to get a little longer with it, that's great. Love it. If you want to do something that's closer to the journal, that's like a more extended response to something, that's also great. But in terms of the minimum of what I'm looking for, just looking for 3 quick comments or questions. Those are going to be, I'm trying to set it up so that there's going to be one assignment where you just have to submit these 3 posts minimum to the forum for that week. And that'll be due by Wednesday. Or like, I think I've got it. Let's see. I already forgot. We're trying to work this out. Midnight on Tuesday. So there we go. Right at the beginning of the week, you're going to have to do these. You have to submit these things. So generally, I think the rhythm for the class that we're going to try to go for here is previous week, Friday, you've got a journal due. So that means you got the weekend to do the reading, and maybe even a little bit into like Monday if you need to, Monday or Tuesday. Don't leave it to Tuesday and Monday if you can help it. But because of schedules and stuff, I know things can get crazy. But try to have your reading done on the weekend. And then as you're going through the reading, like right in the middle of the reading, if something pops up, write it down or type it up. And then after you're done with the reading, submit at least 3 of those to the forum posts. After you have posted them, then you'll be able to see what other people have posted. Until then, you can't see other people's responses. So you're going to add your post into the forum. Then you'll be able to see everybody's. And then you'll have until Friday at midnight to make 3 replies. So I kind of want 3 of your sort of initial broaching some topic, broaching a question, reaction, something like that. By the end of the week, I want another 3 that are going to be responses to what other people have said, to try to get some discussion going. And you can go above and beyond if you want to, absolutely. In fact, I kind of hope that happens. I'm hoping that the assignment just kind of provokes some discussion that then you can kind of take further. So I'm looking for that to happen. So that's the basic framework of what I'm going to be requiring. And we'll try to keep that rhythm throughout the week. We'll see how that goes, because like I said, usually when I teach this class, I treat the schedule very flexibly in terms of when we move on to do material and that sort of thing. But I think I'm going to shift the reading comments to this kind of weekly schedule to be more like the journal entries. Because a week can have 1 reading, could have 2 readings, usually no more than 2. But there could be some overlap with like a carryover from the previous week. Something like that might happen. So your reading comments could be about any of the material that we're covering for that week. If, let's say we've got a week, and there will be plenty of them, where we have 2 readings that we're doing for that week. You're going to hopefully have both of them read on Friday or Saturday and Sunday over the weekend. And then you can choose which comments from which readings you want to post up on Canvas. This might tempt you to only do one of the readings, and then then you can post your 3 comments just from one of the readings. I'm hoping that that's not a choice that you make. Like I said, this class is kind of, I don't like to be a cop. I don't like to police things. I'm having to put some measures in there to kind of make sure you're doing some work for this class. But I really want you to feel excited to do this. And if you're not excited right away, you might get excited if you. My apologies. My computer ran out of disk space while I was recording, so I had to delete some things and get back on it. Let's see, where was I? I can't remember. Just talking about discussion topics. Oh, so there's going to be these weeks where you'll have a couple readings. Oh, right. So, bottom line, I think I was just kind of saying, repeating myself over and over. But bottom line here is that you want to stay up on these readings and not lose track of them. A lot of times in philosophy, I mentioned this on Monday. There's some topics that you might not see what's the point. Like, why does this matter? Why is there any meaning in discussing this topic? So not everything might grab your attention right away. Not everything's going to be super exciting right off the bat. Philosophy kind of has this like slow burn to it sometimes. Like the deeper you get into it, the more you're like, whoa, this is crazy. And there's like more interest there. Sometimes you might need to have some patience with it to see before it's going to kind of really come alive. I'm going to try to help with that as much as I can, especially in my lectures. Kind of show you why this matters or why this might be interesting or what might be at stake here. Why do we need to have this discussion? Why do we need to have this debate? So definitely I encourage you, most of you guys have never encountered philosophy before, try to approach it with an open mind. Try to be looking for what's of interest here and not just kind of like wait for the initial reaction. Also, the reading is difficult, and that can kind of turn you off sometimes too. Philosophers are not writing to the Cliff Notes audience sort of thing. They're trying to build, when they're trying to seek the truth, and they're sensitive to all these factors that affect what we are going to consider as true, or what might affect our decision about what we're going to believe. They're trying to cram all that into their writing. They're trying to bring all those sensitivities to bear. So that makes things pretty complicated sometimes, where it isn't just like, here's the point. They do have those like keynote sorts of claims, and they're going to have some theses that they think are, this is the like central belief we should have, the central claim. And there might even be some major arguments, but usually these things get complicated really fast. A lot of philosophy is like looking at the things that are ordinary, that we've gotten very used to, and seeing them in a new light, seeing them as really being more complicated than we can think they are by just being so familiar with them. Sometimes I describe philosophers as like they're kind of like adults who are trying to go back to being children again. Like when you're a kid, reality is freaking crazy. It's like every day you're like, what? That happens too? Like life could be like this? Whoa, there's a totally new phenomenon. That's totally novel. I've never seen that thing before. Wow. Right? So, but then we kind of get familiar. We're like, oh, I've seen that thing a million times. Like nothing new now. It's like no reason to think more about it. Of course this thing exists. Like no problem. And its familiarity can sometimes turn us off from thinking more deeply about it. And philosophers are kind of trying to go back. They're trying to like turn back the clock on how we take things for granted, to analyze those hidden assumptions. Our first topic that we're really going to get into, past the stuff we're going to do next week, that's kind of more just general, here's philosophy, here's what it's about sort of thing. But when we get to our first real topic in philosophy, this topic of personal identity, that's something that, I mean, I never thought about before I read some philosophers and what they had to say about it. It's like people. What could be more mundane or obvious that people exist? But how do they exist? What kind of thing is a person? That's crazy. I know, you don't really think about it. Kids think about it, and when you talk about kids, talk to kids about philosophical topics, they're there. They're on that level. They understand. They're like, that is a question. There's some wonderful stuff coming out from the IAPC, the Institute for the Advancement of Philosophy in Children at Montclair University. One of my faculty mentors in grad school was involved with them, and I actually thought that I might apply to their program, but I opted for a master's degree in philosophy instead. But this program has been trying to design curriculum for like 6, 7, and 8-year-olds studying philosophy. It's not something you have to wait until you're in college or an adult in order to start thinking about. Because kids are thinking, like person? Like around 6, 7, and 8, that's when kids start kind of recognizing that there are people, not just that there are people, but they have minds like they do, that they have like their own set of experiences, and they might have different perspectives. That's when it's really starting to click for kids, and that is a really trippy time for them. You talk to them during that period, it's really fantastic. They're like constantly like, what is that person thinking? What's going on with them? I was familiar with this object, but I hadn't thought about it having this kind of reality to it. And that's what the personal identity question is going to get into. Like, what is a person? Is it just a physical object that waves its hands about and moves around, as opposed to like this cup which doesn't? Or is it something else that maybe it has to do with the mind, but what's the mind? Is the mind just the brain? Is it just a physical thing? Is it some like spiritual substance, like a soul? Is there like, is there like physical matter, and then there's like mental matter? So reality is like a mix of physical and mental. That's one option. There's some other theories out there too. We're going to look at 3 principal ones. I'm not going to go in more depth right now, but that's a good example of a topic that maybe you're like, what's the point or what's the deal here? Just because it's so familiar. And when we start looking at it again and being like, well, let me try to actually answer that question. Let me try out a definition or a thesis about here is what a person is. It gets really difficult really fast. And this reading, the readings for personal identity are going to throw you right into the deep end in philosophy. You'll see just how complicated a lot of these discussions and debates are, even though they're about things that are very mundane and ordinary. And that happens a lot in philosophy. Most of philosophy is about analyzing, trying to have a deeper understanding of things that are very ordinary, everyday, and familiar. I also want to share on this thought a little bit from Nietzsche, which we're going to read later in the quarter. He talks about love during one of these passages. He says, every time you're going to love, anytime someone loves something, they had to learn how to love that thing. They didn't just have this like spontaneous reaction. They had to get into a place. They had to learn how to love this. He says this is true even for ourselves. If we're going to love ourselves, it works this way too. He says there's these like stages. He says the first stage is just, it happened again. Man, these things take up a lot of space on the computer, but I will have to compress it for online streaming, so we'll figure that stuff out. But I just deleted a ton of crap, so we should be uninterrupted for the rest of this lecture. So Nietzsche's first step here was, first you just have to tolerate this thing. Something that's unfamiliar. You're like, this is weird. I just have to tolerate. That's the first step. And then as it becomes more familiar, as I like encounter it more often and I tolerate it more, I give it some like space to exist in my life, then I start to get a little like attached to it. I start to expect it. I notice when it's not there, Nietzsche says, and therefore I start to long for it because I notice when it's gone. I'm like, oh, I was like really familiar. I'm starting to kind of like that thing. And then the more that this happens, the more that I have this relationship with it, then it might get embedded as what Nietzsche calls a condition of life, as something that I can't imagine life existing without. And I think that there's a lot of wisdom in what he's saying here, that to enjoy something or to find it fulfilling or satisfying takes some kind of initial input of energy into the system that might feel arbitrary or even like you don't want to do it. And only when we invest first, then, as Nietzsche says, it rewards us with pleasure for accommodating it, for giving it a home to live in our lives. So I hope this quarter that you make out a little home, maybe a little shed on the property for philosophy and give it some time and attention and love and energy. And maybe by the end of the quarter, you'll start seeing the fruit of that and enjoying it. Maybe you'll enjoy it right away. Maybe you're already set up to enjoy it. That's awesome. I'm definitely going to be doing all I can to kind of cultivate that too. But even if you're like, I'm not enjoying this philosophy thing, please talk to me about it. I welcome the challenge to try to help draw your attention to what makes philosophy special and meaningful. Last quarter, I had a student who was just like straight up from the beginning of the quarter. His first journal entry was why he thought he shouldn't be in this class, like why this class was a waste of time. And I asked him, I was like, why are you here? So that's cool. We ended up having some discussions about it. Actually, he ended up dropping the class, but I don't know if that was because of his not love for the field of philosophy. But if you are in that boat, if you're like, I'm just not seeing it, please come and talk to me. I'm not going to be offended by that. I'm not like, what's your problem or something like that. Can't you see how wonderful this philosophy thing is? Like, what's the deal? That's not going to be my attitude. I will love talking to you about it, because even the value of philosophy is something that we want to engage in with philosophical inquiry and debate and be critical about. And that's what we're going to be doing next week with our readings from Plato and from Bertrand Russell about why philosophy is valuable and meaningful. Okay, there's one more topic here that we want to talk about really briefly. I want to share with you a little picture of what the writing assignments are going to look like. So there's going to be 4 of these. As the syllabus says, I'm going to have a couple special classes set up. Probably these are going to be video lectures that I will record about how to write a philosophy paper, which is a little different than writing other types of papers. A philosophy paper is at its core argumentative, and that's different from just sharing your opinion like I was talking about with the journals. It's getting into a debate and defending your position, and that requires a lot of work. It requires you to think about the structure of the paper differently than you might otherwise do. And there are certain virtues of good philosophy papers that I think are hard skills to learn. They are uncomfortable at first. They might not come naturally. They might take some effort to get better at, to develop it. And I'm going to be helping you with that. I'm going to be trying to set the expectations as clearly as possible in terms of what a good philosophy paper looks like. I'm going to have a writing guide that I will send you that gives you kind of a step-by-step procedure for how to go about tackling a project of this magnitude. And the assignments themselves are designed to support you in that process of figuring out how to do this thing. For some of you, it's probably going to feel very natural, like you already write like this. For others of you, it might feel totally new and foreign, a foreign way of writing papers, or just writing in general. And I want to give you a lot of support along the way with this. One of the big ways, there you go. One of the big ways I'm going to be supporting you is with comments and feedback. I give extensive comments. I've got a lot of students this quarter. There's going to be a lot of work, but I'm going to give you guys all the time that I can to really help you along with the process. There's going to be the writing of a paper, of a philosophy paper that we're going to be doing this quarter, broken into 4 assignments. The first one's going to be a very detailed outline. And this isn't an outline with a bunch of blank checks that you'll fill in when you do the second part, the draft. The detailed outline I want to see containing all of the intellectual work that you put into the paper. So all of the ideas that you plan on discussing, all the points you want to make, all of the arguments you're going to construct, all that needs to be in the outline. You're just not executing on it yet. You're not doing the extended description or explanation of walking through the argument. But I need to see all those ideas. All that content's we want to have in there. You want to imagine, like, what if you just wrote a draft? What would you be saying in the draft? Take those ideas, put them in an outline. That's the goal with this detailed outline. I'll be giving a lot more advice about that when that assignment's getting closer. We'll have a little bit of time here to let you get familiar with what philosophy is all about before I start asking you for this detailed outline. But in a couple weeks, I'll probably be putting that on your radar, and that'll be happening soon. But more details when it's getting closer. The second assignment is going to be writing a draft of the outline. And I'll be expecting you to revise those ideas too. Maybe in the process of brainstorming and constructing the outline, you're like, maybe I want a different thesis. Maybe I don't want to defend this position. Maybe I can't defend this position. Or maybe it's too much. I'm going to have to like narrow and focus it down to be able to accomplish this in the span of 1,500 to 2,000 words, which is what I'm going to be looking for the draft. Minimum 1,500. You should be shooting closer to 2,000. Even that's not a lot of space. And if you want to go do more than that, that's great too. The third assignment is kind of special. I've modeled this after the way actual philosophy conferences work. At a philosophy conference, someone will give a paper, they'll give a presentation, and then there's always someone who has received the paper ahead of time and has prepared comments and criticisms and objections for that paper. So they give critical feedback right there on the spot, and then usually they open it up to Q&A. What I want you to do for this third writing assignment is basically do that critical response preparation. You'll write it up. You're not going to do anything. There's not going to be any oral presentations in this class, so you're not going to have to get up in front of the class and talk about your ideas. But what we will be doing is trading your paper drafts anonymously, and you'll write a 500-word minimum critical response to that paper. And this isn't going to be something like, you made a spelling mistake on page 3, or you should have better transition sentences, or any of that English crap. This isn't an English class. I don't mean crap. I don't mean anxiety. This just isn't an English class. I'm not going to be focused on grammar, spelling stuff at all. Doesn't matter. Our job in a philosophy class is to work with your ideas. That's where the main focus is. And that's what I want your focus to be on when you're doing these critical response papers. So it'll be a little short, but you'll get some peer comments that way too, in addition to all the feedback I'll be giving you on your outline and your rough draft. And then the fourth assignment, as you might guess, will be the final draft, and that'll be due at the end of finals week, at the very end of the quarter. And you'll take all that feedback and make a better paper. At each stage, I'll be expecting you to kind of push yourself to take your paper to the next level. And the main theme here that you're going to get sick and tired of me saying, I'm sure, is to engage with your opponent. That's the hardest thing about doing philosophy, is anticipating what are the perspectives of your opponents and what are their best arguments to challenge your position, and then to give replies to those arguments and objections. That's really difficult stuff to do. It doesn't come naturally to most of us. It's kind of, I think it's one of those, like, it's like a weird muscle in some part of your body that you never use. And so you still got it, and it's just a little weak. And you just got to do like some crazy exercise or something to work on that muscle and develop it, make it stronger. And that's what the journals are for, and hopefully even the forum discussions will help you with that. And you'll see some really good models from the papers we're going to read of these professional or historical philosophers who are doing exactly that. They're using charity. They're trying to come up with the best arguments that their opponents have to offer and dealing with those, rather than what is our usual practice, which is called, where we actually have a name for this mistake. It's called the straw man fallacy. Maybe some of you have heard about it. Straw man fallacy is when you argue against your opponent by only presenting the weakest arguments that they have to offer instead of the strongest ones. So you can basically make your opponent look stupid and just dismiss them out of hand. It happens all the time. It's very tempting when you're arguing against your opponent, paint them in the worst possible light. This is something I'll be talking about when we talk about the code later on this week again, in terms of bad ways of arguing and what responsibilities we have in arguing well. Definitely, winning the debate is not the most important thing. Getting at the truth is. And only a strong opponent is going to really push you to get us closer to what is hopefully a better idea or approximation of what the truth actually is. If you're only facing off against weak opponents, then it's not really pushing the debate forward very much. And that's going to be your job in these paper assignments. A model I'll probably use again talking about this in class, but I want to give it to you right now, is think about the paper project you're doing this quarter as you taking time out of your life. I'm forcing you, but you're still imagine I wasn't forcing you. You're going to take time out of your life to think about some question that perplexes all of us, or maybe most of us. Maybe some people don't care, but maybe there are some people who do care. And you're going to spend some time thinking about that problem, something where we don't know what the right answer is, or we've got some answers that we have some confidence in, but then there's other people who have tons of confidence in maybe some other answer. So there's some controversy here. There's some indeterminacy about what exactly is the truth on this particular question. So you don't want to pick a question that has some kind of obvious or trivial answer. I don't want you defending some position that's obvious, like don't torture babies. That's not a very interesting thesis. No one's going to be arguing against it. There's not a lot to be like, yeah, I think it's actually totally cool to torture babies. I like to do that all the time. There's just those opponents don't exist. So you want to pick a topic that is going to get into something of actual controversy. You're going to spend some time thinking about it, and then in your paper, you're going to report back to us what you sort of discovered or what arguments you find compelling. Oh, that sneeze really wants to come back. Okay, I didn't think I needed to pause the video for it. Oh, worst timing. Okay. In terms of a paper topic, I'm giving you free reign. I want you to talk to me about them. If you've got an idea for a paper topic of something that you think could be a good philosophy thesis, come and talk to me about it. I definitely want to be working with you in developing it. Picking a good thesis is the first major challenge to writing a good philosophy paper. If you don't set up a good target, then it doesn't matter how many arguments you have. It might not be worth our time or attention. Better. All right, so yeah, your topic, if it's not a good topic, then it may not be something that's worth your time or our time. So getting a good topic is a big deal, and I want to work with you on that. Make sure that you get a good topic. Man, sneezing just makes my brain, it's like flashes all the memory. So controversy, engaging with your opponent, those are the most important things. But in terms of a particular subject matter, I'm really open on this. If there's something that you care about, like some life question, or just something that in your life has provoked this question, made you think about it, that's going to be great. We can probably turn that into some kind of philosophical topic. I don't want something like silly and trivial. Like I had a student try to write a paper about defending why peanut butter jars should have lids on the top and the bottom. I don't want something like that. That's not going to be cool. But chances are there is, for any topic that you have a lot of passion about, or that's something that is of controversy and that really perplexes human beings, we're going to be able to find a good topic in the area. It might not be the first crack you take at it, but there might be something nearby that we can find that will work. And I do want you to pick something that you're passionate about, something that you have genuine curiosity in, something that matters to you. It's also a bonus if you maybe have already thought about it before. So you're familiar with the landscape a little bit. For this reason, I'm actually going to discourage you from writing a philosophy paper on any of the stuff we're doing this quarter, because it might be pretty unfamiliar to you. You might not. It's like in order to write a paper to add something to the discussion, you'd have to read a lot of stuff first to figure out where the conversation's been at before you can sort of add something that's going to push that debate forward. So if you pick a topic that you're maybe already familiar with, or you already have some thoughts about that you want to explore further, that might work a little bit better. But if you do want to write something that's like subject matter we're going to do this quarter, then talk to me about it, because I am all for supporting ambition. And it might be a little more work for you, but it could be very rewarding work. So if you're feeling that sort of thing, come and talk to me. Basically, talk to me as soon as you have any inkling about what you might want to do as a paper topic. And I'll help you refine that and get it where it needs to be an assignment that I'll consider as a good one for what I'm looking for. And I'll talk about this more too in the coming weeks in preparing you for doing that. Yeah, so that's everything with the paper project. The code for this video lecture is going to be, let me think about it. What's a good one? Well, okay, let's just do this week. This lecture, it'll be bananas. Bananas is the code word. When you open up the quiz on Canvas, say bananas. That's it. So it'll be like a little fill in the blank question. You just say bananas, I'll give you credit for it. Awesome. Okay. There was a little bit more that I wanted to share with you guys, but I think I'm going to save it for Wednesday. And it has to do with what respect is all about and what it means to respect each other when we're debating with each other. I talked a little bit earlier about modesty, but we want to also talk about respecting others. And because we're going to be getting into disagreements, where there's conflict, difference of opinion, different perspectives, how do we deal with that? Respect is going to be pretty important. I've got some notes about it on the syllabus that I'd love to have you read. They're right down here. in class participation. And I'll want to talk about that more with you in person too. I've got a little metaphor that I'm fond of for explaining this. And I think respect is another one of those concepts that's very familiar to us. And there are maybe some other deeper dimensions to it that get overlooked because they aren't quite as familiar. So because this concept of like respecting people is important, and you hear people talking about it all over the place, it's a very familiar concept. That might be another case where it's like, it's so familiar, we're not maybe thinking as deeply about it as I think we ought to. So I'll have some thoughts I want to share about respect. And maybe you'll have some thoughts you want to share about respect too. And we can compare notes and maybe have a little debate to see what you guys think about that. And I definitely look forward to that. I think this course is going to be a great one. Thanks for watching the video, and let me know if you're having trouble viewing it, or this is all a big experiment, right? So we'll see how it goes. And hope I might need to buy a better microphone. I have a suspicion that my computer's microphone is not the highest quality, so we'll find that out. Maybe I can improve the experience for you as the quarter goes on here. Okay, see you guys soon.